Hello, Oracles. Today I'm off on a nice little local hike here in my home state of Connecticut, enjoying the day. And I wanted to discuss with you guys my investments and how I choose what to invest in for the future. And I like to call it Tesla vision. And for those of you who have been followers on this channel for a while, you know full well that Tesla's my largest position right now, sitting at 59% and growing. And with that, I came up with Tesla vision because of the interview that Tesla owner Silicon Valley had with Elon recently. And one of the first things that Elon talked about was, when you look at the internal combustion engine, and when that became commonplace, it made the external combustion engine, like the steam train, seem quirky and niche. And if you saw when it was like, oh, that's weird, but it had its place, and now it doesn't. Very similar to landlines or, typewriters or word processors, things like that. They're just yesterday's technology. Nothing wrong with them. They were the new technology when they were first invented, but have since gone to the wayside. And so when I'm looking to invest in the future, I ask myself, well, let me use future vision. And one of the things we talked about on here recently was how Tesla views and plans for the future. They look 10 to 20 years down the road and say, all right, well, here's the end point. Here's the place I want to be in 10 to 20 years. What do I need to do to get there? And they play that entire game backwards and just figure out what path they need to go on to get to that place. And so that's what I do with my investing. So I look 10 to 20 years in the future. And an easy way to do it is look at what the youngest generations are using for technology. What are they into? Because when they get older, that's what's going to be commonplace. That's what's going to be the norm for them. I mean, think about, most kids nowadays playing around on iPads and iPhones. I was growing up, I had sticks and a ball. That was legit what I had. And so, it's a great vision to see what the future could hold. And so if that is what the commonplace is for the youth nowadays, that's most likely going to be a more prevalent commonplace in the future. So what companies are out there that are going into these places? And obviously, in my eyes, Tesla is one of those companies. I mean, thinking about their total addressable market and the places they're looking to get into, not just when it comes to EVs, but when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to Optimus taking over labor for the entire world. I mean, these are huge, huge potentials for the company. So this is why I invest the majority of my money into Tesla, is because their future potential and total addressable market are unparalleled. No one else can match what their potential is. Sure, there's a lot of things that need to come to fruition that they need to prove along the way to actually make these things happen, but I am investing on the faith that I have that they will make that happen. Another thing that they had discussed was back in 2008, which could arguably be the most challenging year in Elon's career, was about how the company that was doing the bodies for the Roadster at the time, Elon had actually gone straight to their manufacturing and said, hey, do you guys mind postponing your vacations, just to get this done for us? Because if you don't, we're going to go out of business. And it reminds me a lot of these emails that Elon has been sending recently. Obviously, Tesla's in a significantly different place now. Back then, they were trying to survive, and they're trying to do this just so they could survive. And now it's more of a way of just securing their lead, let's say. But Elon is anticipating very difficult economic times coming up, which is reminiscent of what we faced back in 2008. So again, not needing to be psychic, he is planning for the worst. So he's anticipating this coming and preparing himself for it as if it's going to be a massive recession like we had in 2008. So this is his planning. This is what they're doing going forward. So again, when I'm looking at the future as to what do I want to invest in, I want to invest in companies who prepare like this, who can prepare for the worst, understand how everything affects the company, and they're the smartest and strongest to be able to get through it. And when we see the media putting out misleading headlines like they did yesterday with the 10% of the workforce getting cut from Tesla, when you sift through these and see what's truly going on, you realize that yesterday was a great buying opportunity. Sure, it could go lower this week. Who knows? We've got CPI and all that coming up, but still, looking at how the media is portraying it, and they're against Tesla too, in situations like this, it's just, you know, you got to keep your eyes open for moments like this. And Time Machine in the comments brought up a great point. Why isn't it that, you know, something like this, for putting out misleading headlines and information, why aren't they getting sued? Why doesn't that happen ever? It drives me nuts, because Elon could put out factual tweets about taking the company private, and he's got funding secured. He gets sued like crazy, fined by the SEC and all sorts of problems. Yet we have media putting out blatantly misleading headlines like this, which clearly drew the stock price way down further than it would have gone, even though the macro was pulling down. Makes you wonder why that stuff doesn't happen. But I'm hopeful that someday in the future, we will be at a point where we won't be getting these misleading headlines, and all of this extra BS that pulls the stock price down will go away. And then the stock can actually flourish like it should, and we'll be great to go. And this brings me back to another point I had made of, when we are looking at the future as to what we want to invest in, what do you see the future FANG stocks being? If you are a long-term investor, long-term could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So where do you see certain companies being that far down the road? What companies do you see doing the best? Heck, some of the future FANG companies might not even exist yet. So let me know in the comments below what stocks you see and what companies you see doing well 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And sometimes for me, it's more of a broad and general area that I want to be investing in rather than a specific company, because you never know, one specific company could have one bad thing go for them and they fall apart. So for me, I'll look at, technology. What technologies do I see in the future? Renewable energy, we're going to be going electric vehicles, Optimus potentially, cryptocurrency I see as being a strong piece in the future. Getting into things like this and areas like that are where I'm thinking, this is where I want to put my money. Biogenomics seems like it's another piece. I don't know a lot about it. I have BNGO as one of my stocks for that space, but you look at like an ARCG, maybe that's something to get into once we start pulling out of this bear market that we're in. Maybe that's a space to get into just so you can kind of have some broad coverage of this area that you want to invest in. ETFs are a great place to be. If you don't know enough about an area that you want to invest in a specific company, ETFs are not a bad idea to get into for long-term investing. And now when it comes to ETFs and index funds, things like that, it's about risk reward. You go into a fund like that, you may not see the same gains you would if you had invested in individual stocks on their own, but there's a little bit of a safety net behind it also, whereas an individual stock, can be a lot more volatile than an ETF or an index fund. So again, it's all about your risk threshold, what you guys are looking into doing. Again, not financial advice, but just, how the market plays and swings things. And ETFs are not going to move as much, but, you have a little more security and safety behind them normally. And so I've had many of you ask, what are some of the indicators that I look at when I'm investing? I do technical analysis, so I look at some indicators there. So when I'm investing, the three most important things I look at is, number one, fundamentals. When I'm investing in a company for long term, fundamentals are always the number one. Because if you don't have a good fundamentals behind your company, then it doesn't matter at all. If you're playing momentum swing trading, totally different. That could be all sentiment based, but for this fundamental based long-term investing is where I look. Second's going to be company specific news, what they have going on, what their potential is for the future, and the sentiment around that, because sentiment does play into the stock itself. Sentiment usually plays more into near-term stuff. Tesla did run up quite a bit because they have a lot of potential in front of them. But when it comes to the actual volatility of the stock, that's usually where the sentiment comes into play. So again, this is why as a Tesla investor, you need to have a strong stomach, because there's a lot of sentiment swings going in both directions that swing the stock all over the place. It's pretty wild. The third thing I look at is macro environment. And as we're seeing right now, the macro environment could weigh very heavily on a stock individually. So regardless of what the sentiment is for a stock, regardless of what the fundamentals are for a stock, if the macro environment is heavy, it ain't gonna matter, because the macro environment is going to move you in any direction. And then you can take that information, all of that out long term. So looking at the fundamentals, where are the fundamentals going to take this company 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? What is the macro environment looking like over that same time frame? And then you can take a look at it and say, all right, well, when it comes to the sentiment, when do I want to buy the stock? For Tesla, for me, it's every day. It doesn't matter. I see such a great long-term horizon. It's not going to matter. When I'm looking at flipping my stock in my IRA, or if I'm looking for, maybe an entry point to add a lot more into the stock than I do on my daily basis for my DCA, then I will look at sentiment swings. And I'll be like, well, where's the sentiment at now? Because if we're coming down when it comes to sentiment, then for me, I'll be like, all right, well, now's a good time to buy. Very much like Friday was when we got the headlines that came out talking about 10% job cuts. So when we get sentiment like that, huge buying opportunity in my eyes. And again, that's just my opportunity to add extra or flip things in my IRA. But when it comes to long-term investing, I'm just adding every day when it comes to Tesla. But when it comes to other stocks that I'm looking at, hey, where do I want to add? You got to take all these things into account and be like, well, first off, do the fundamentals of the company, are they good? Is it something that I actually want to be invested in long term? And then I say, well, where's the macro environment at? Because if we're suppressed, then maybe now is a good buying opportunity. But again, you go back to the fundamentals. Can the company get through these difficult economic times to be able to come out on the other side and still be worth investing in? And then you look at the sentiment and say, hey, is now a good time to invest? And sometimes you get the trifecta, which is right now, the macro environment sentiment, not good. The macroeconomics, not good. Company specific sentiment, not good. But again, you go back to where are fortunes born? Fortunes are born during bear markets. Why is that? Because a lot of stock prices are depressed way lower than they really should be because of the overwhelming pressure we're feeling from two of the three, which is macro environment and sentiment. So then, when you're looking at the fundamentals, a company like Tesla, who is setting themselves up to be able to thrive during these times, is perfect to invest in because everything else is bringing it down unnecessarily low. So when we come out of it, it can then run again. And while my near-term investments look like poo-poo, it doesn't matter because long-term, they will look amazing because I hunkered down during these times and invested when things were tough. And I look at investing as very much like the weather. And when it's cloudy outside, like the market is right now with a potential storm brewing, do you want to stay inside and get some work done? Or are you going to go outside and enjoy it? Now, personally, I grew up with my father calling me the weatherman because playing baseball my whole life growing up, inevitably every time I pitched, it was the gnarliest weather. And I took that right into my obstacle course racing career, where a lot of my races were some absolutely gnarly weather, especially Iceland and Sweden. So the way I look at it is, if you can hunker down during the times where it's cloudy and storming outside, that's when you do all the work. Because ask yourself, when it's a beautiful day outside, now granted, some of you who may live in California have a beautiful day every day, but for anybody else out there, if it's a beautiful day outside, don't you want to go out and relax and enjoy it? Yeah. So during these times right now where it's difficult, put in the work so that when we get back to a bull market, you can just sit back and enjoy it. It's what I do with my dollar cost averaging. I add a little bit every day, and when the market gets red and more difficult, I add more. When the market's green, I just sit back and enjoy it. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support and feedback. If you have not subscribed, please do so down below. Sign yourself up for notifications. I am over on Twitter at OracleTim1. I share all the latest Tesla news, pertinent stock market information, and all of my daily trades. We do have a Discord channel. That link is in the description below as well. Thank you so much. Have a great one.